The first thing we're going to do then, once we've connected to this database, is retrieve some data from it. So you'll remember that I've saved just one piece of data in this database, that is my email address and password. So we're going to try and get that back from the database and display it in our script. The first thing I'm going to do is change this code slightly so that it doesn't display anything if the database connection was successful, but if the database connection wasn't successful, the script actually stops. And we can do that using the die command, which feels a bit harsh, but to be honest, if we can't do a database connection, then there's no point doing anything else. So we should always have a clause that if the connection fails, the script just stops. All right. The second bit of preparation that we need is to assign a variable to our database connection so that we can refer to it later on. And normally we call that variable link. But you can call it whatever you like, but link is pretty standard. All right. The first step then in querying our database is to create a query. And this is where MySQL comes in. So anything between these two quotes will not be in PHP, it will be in MySQL. So we're learning a whole new language here. But don't worry, it's pretty straightforward. So if we want to select everything from the users table within our database, then we would just say select, and our symbol for everything in SQL is star. So this means select everything from, and then the table name, which is users. And that's it. That's our way of saying select everything from our users table. Notice the capitalization there. It's not necessary. This code will work fine without it, but it is conventional that with MySQL you capitalize the standard MySQL keywords, and that just makes the whole thing easier to read. But if you experiment, you'll find that that works just as well. It's just not as easy or as conventional to read as with the capitalization. Right, so that's all we need from our SQL side. We just need to now run the query using our link connection to this database. And we do that in a few steps. So step one is to actually do the query. And we do this using MySQL I _ query. And then we give the database connection that we want to do the query over. So in this case, link. And then we give the query itself. So I've called that query. And that will do the query, but it won't actually return the results. So the way we'd normally use this would be to put an if statement around it to check to see whether it's been successful. So if that works, it will return true. So for now, we can say query was successful. And just before we run that, I need to add the database name to the MySQLi connect command up here. So on the Eco web hosting servers, as on many web hosts, the database name and the database username are the same. So I'm just going to copy that part and put it at the end there. And this is the database name. If you're using a different web host or a different system, then you should check to see whether the database username and name are different. All right, let's have a look then. We'll run this and query was successful. Fantastic. So that's all well and good, but we want to actually get the data back from that query. So how do we do that? Well, first we assign a variable to the result of the MySQLi query, and normally we call that result. So now we can use the variable result to refer to this query, and if it was successful, then we can get the results from it. And we do that using MySQLi fetch array, like that. And then we say that we want to fetch the array associated with this query or this result. And normally that will be a row of the database. So we normally call that row, like that. Okay, so let's print out that array. Remember, print R is print a readable version of an array. And there we go. So our first real proof that we have connected to that database, we've got our data back in the form of an associative array with the ID, email, and password. Notice that each variable there can be accessed in two different ways. Might be slightly clearer if I look at the source. So you can use 0, 1, and 2 to refer to the ID, email, and password, or you can use, probably more usefully, their variable names, so ID, email, and password. All right, very quick challenge then, just to show that you know how to use that array. Can you make it so that instead of displaying the contents of the array, it says your email is, and then robert.robertsford.co.uk, and your password is, and then my password. Go for it. All right, that should have been fairly straightforward. Two different ways to do it, of course. So we could say your email is, and then we're taking the row array and using email, and your password is, and then we want the password field in the array as well. And we're obviously appending that in the usual way with periods or full stops. Take a look. There we go. Wonderful. And you could also have done it using the numbered fields, although not 0. That would have got you the ID, 1 and 2. And that will do exactly the same thing. All right, that's as far as we're going to go in this video. There's a lot more that you can do with querying. Obviously, being able to select everything from the database is not what you want to do most of the time. But we're going to take a quick break from querying, and we're going to see how to add and update data in a database, and then we'll look at more advanced queries to select the data that we want, and also to loop through if we get multiple results.